Okay, well, welcome back to week 2 of logarithms. This week we won't jump into anything new. I feel like expanding and condensing logs are kind of a difficult subject, so we'll spend this week again on expanding and condensing. We'll jump into a little bit more difficult examples, nothing too crazy, but I think it's something very important for college algebra that you understand. Now, like I said before, I wished I was taught a little bit more about logarithms when I took college algebra and beyond. So ultra important stuff. As we kind of go through, we'll do a few examples over expanding, we'll do a nearpod activity, do a couple examples over condensing, and do another nearpod activity, and be done with activity number 1. Then I have a flip grid activity for you guys on day 2 of this week as well. Remember, the whole idea first of expanding logarithms so that you understand the rules that come with it. And I put the rules from your notes. So you notice you have the product rule, you have your quotient rule, and you have your power rule. All right, we're going to refer back to those 3 rules today. So in expanding, what you want to do is you want to look inside your parenthesis and you want to ask yourself what you have going on. But before we jump into that, a lot of people get confused because they're like, well, you don't have a number down here, because I thought in logarithms you're supposed to have that number. And we kind of touched upon that last week in terms of what is actually there. If there's nothing written there, we assume there's a base 10, because we're a tens based system. Our calculator are all tens based whenever you put it in there. So it's not a huge ordeal, but just making sure that you understand that's kind of the hidden rule of logarithms. As we kind of continue on, you don't have to have that there, but just something to talk about that I think is ultra important. So what do you want to do when you're looking at this logarithm? You solely want to look inside your parentheses always, and we want to take this logarithm that has 1 log and we want to expand it to multiple logs. So what you want to look at is what is happening here. If you notice, I see this multiplication sign. So I look over here at my rules and I say, okay, so I definitely am going to use my product rule. And I like to think that I use my product or my quotient rule first when expanding, and then use my power rule kind of second and last whenever I expand to my final thing. So expanding this, we would have log, and you can put a base 10 if you want, of x plus log of the square root of x squared plus 1. So where did that plus sign come from? Remember, if you look, that plus sign right there comes from that right being plus sign right there, because my product rule tells me I have to expand it using additional on that. Now, we don't see any quotients going on, meaning division. So what I would look next is there a power rule being used anywhere? Well, I look at this one and I say, well, there's just x. There's no exponents, there's no power with that one. So I know I'm done with that first one. So I can just write the log of x plus. Now, a lot of people say, oh, yeah, there's a power with the x being a 2, but remember, that only applies to the 2. We're looking at x squared plus 1 as a whole. And if you think back to last chapter, we can actually rewrite this as a power. And kind of refreshing your memory, it has a index of 1 or 2 and a power of 1. So we can actually rewrite this as x squared plus 1 all to the 1/2 power. Now you kind of see where last chapter comes into play. As we kind of continue on with this idea, we want to refer back to our rules. And one of the most important rules right now is my power rule, because I do have a power. And I know it's a power because this 1/2 applies to every single thing inside this parenthesis. And it's outside the log too. So that's when I also know I'm going to use my rules of my power rule. So first one we said was complete, so we can just write log of x again. Now the power rule simply tells you that this jumps in front, so this becomes plus 1/2 log of x squared plus 1. Now, we are done, and I'll kind of tell you how you know you're done, is because look, see that it has a simple x. No, there's no quotient going on. There's no multiplication going on, okay? There's no powers within that. So we're good. So we look over here, and I ask myself the same thing. Is there multiplication going on? Nope. Is there a quotient rule going on? Nope. Okay, is there a power rule? And everyone's like, yeah, there's a power of 2 with the x, but remember, that only refers to the x. It has to refer to both what is inside the parentheses. So therefore, you know that is your final answer, and you are complete with that being your expansion. Okay, so let's take a look at another one. I challenge you right now to stop this video. Just give this a whirl. See if you can apply your rules, and then we'll talk from there. Okay, so I hopefully have given a chance to try this one. I brought in our rules so we can kind of see what we have going on, and we'll apply it to those rules as we go. All right, this one looks a lot more challenging. It's a little bit more difficult because you got 3 things going on rather than just the 2 that we had in our last problem. The first thing that I noticed, and that hopefully you noticed too, is this little line right here. That little line right there tells you that you know you're going to use the quotient rule. So we're first going to start off by breaking everything up using our quotient rule. So we would have log of the square root of x squared plus 1 minus, because we divide, we use subtraction. And I'm going to put this on parentheses because we're dividing by both things. So I'm going to put in a big bracket, log of x cubed times x plus 1 to the 4th. So hopefully you see all I've done is subtracted by what I have on the bottom. Now, going back to your good old Algebra 1 days, we would always say that we want to simplify what's inside my parentheses first. So I look at this and I want to simplify, expand it, and I want to look what's happening between my x cubed and my whole x plus 1 to the 4th. And so the operation is obviously a product. So we have to come up here and we're going to use our product rule, which tells me I should put a plus sign in between those. So we're not touching the first one just yet. We're going to put the log of the square root of x squared plus 1 minus, in my bracket, log of x cubed plus log of x plus 1 all to the 4th power. Okay, so now we're getting places. We have multiple logs going on. I'm going to scoot some stuff up to make myself have a little bit more room as we go. All right. So once again, we want to look back at our parenthesis and we want to ask yourself, all right, is that expanded completely? Before we mess with anything else, just like I said, I always want to look at parentheses first. And I say, okay, I see this has a power of 3 and this has a power of 4, so I can probably use my power rules. So I would throw this in front and throw that 4 in front, and that would complete that parenthesis. So we would have log, which we're not touching the first one, of x squared plus 1 minus, in brackets, 3 log x plus 4 log x plus 1. Now we're getting places. Okay, now once again I look at my parentheses and ask myself, all right, any of those 3 rules still apply? If we look, everything is broken up nice and neatly. We've used our product rule, we've used our quotient rule, we've used our power rule, all rules are used. But let's look at our first part. We need to simplify this. Once again, referring back to last chapter, that really is the log of x squared plus 1 all to the 1/2 power minus, and we, like I said, this one is complete, so we could write 3 log of x plus 4 log of x plus 1 close brackets. All right, so now we look at this first one. Is there a rule that I can apply? Absolutely, I can use my power rule once again. So we can kind of finalize this off. Once again, I'm going to move some things up here so I can get some more room. We can finalize this whole problem off by throwing that 1/2 in front of log x squared plus 1 minus. Now, if you really want to get creative, you could go back to your Algebra 1 days and think of a -1 I'm distributing through here. We could write -3 log of x minus 4 log of x plus 1, and you really simplify this down, and now you're completely done with expanding. So, seems like a really difficult problem, but if you break it down into each of the rules that apply and ask yourself what is happening between my logs, you can really apply this pretty simple. Hopefully this expanding lesson helps you. Now do this Nearpod activity to follow.